Hello everybody, welcome into our latest live broadcast. Today it is the 12th of June, it's Thursday, 2025. I'm CareyHolzman, and today, well, I bought a used motherboard, a returned motherboard off Amazon, and it was a pretty good deal, so I'm curious about getting all the accessories in the box and why somebody might have returned this. I'm hoping they just didn't know what they were doing. Thankfully, if you are smarter than the average bear, then you will be able to save a lot of money based on other people's ignorance. I mean, I don't have a problem with it. I didn't suggest they return it or buy it. So they often buy things that are incompatible, don't know how to use it, and there's nothing wrong with the thing they buy. Then Amazon gets it back. Why would they sell it for new, or rather for a new price, when you can get a new one? So what incentivizes Amazon to encourage you to buy this inventory there's nothing wrong with, potentially? But at the same time, the person could have been, could have damaged it, or maybe it was broken out of the box. Highly unlikely. But the point I'm trying to make is that there's no law that requires Amazon to discount, or any other retailer to discount returned products, but they cannot say it's new. If it's returned or has used parts, that must be claimed, that must be clear to the customer. So if you're the customer and you have a new thing for $200 and a used thing for $200, why would you buy the used thing? So Amazon and most retailers like Best Buy will discount the return thing to incentivize you to buy it. If you can save a little money, get rid of that inventory. Otherwise, it can often be sold off to a distributor or just written off. Perfectly good product will be put into a trash compactor and destroyed, so the tax write-off. That happens all the time too. As a consumer, you don't see this happening. In fact, you wouldn't even know. But if you ever worked for Best Buy, like somebody I know, you would know that perfectly good material is destroyed. And they destroy it because they don't want one of the employees coming back after hours and taking something out of the trash. And they must provide the IRS with evidence that it's been destroyed in order for the tax write-off to be valid, because they don't want the manufacturer or the business to claim they destroyed something they never destroyed just so they can turn around and resell it again while taking the tax deduction. So there's all kinds of boundaries in place to prevent fraud. Fraud still happens. Sometimes somebody might order a part from Amazon and switch it out with a bad part so they don't go through the manufacturer's warranty process. What'll end up happening is, if this board is bad and we send it back to Amazon, it won't be resold again. At that point, Amazon takes it up with who they're buying it from. And, if the person they're buying it from is kind of a no returns deal, then it'll often go into a return pallet. And then people can buy Amazon return pallets filled with miscellaneous stuff by the pound. And then you can sort through it all, determine if you earned your money back or not, and then relist everything with photos and descriptions one by one on eBay or other selling sites, deal with each seller and shipping and packaging and then possible returns. That's a lot of hard work to earn $1. But there are people that make a living just buying pallets of Amazon returns, and you'll never quite know what's on the pallet. It's, categorized as electronic items or clothing, and it is what it is. You get what you get, and you'll probably need a forklift in a big storage area. Even if you just buy one pallet, it's very heavy, so it's not like something most people will do out of their garage. There are also businesses, that retail shops, that will buy pallets and pallets on a regular basis of Amazon goods that are returned, and they will buy somewhere probably around 60 to 100 pallets a week. And then it'll be a discount store. And quite often, some of these stores just set the pallets down in aisles. And then they'll say, like, I know one shop says we get our pallets on Tuesdays, so everything is 20 bucks or whatever. And then anything left over on Wednesday is 15 bucks, and anything left over on Thursday is 10 bucks. And then I think they close someday, and then it's like whatever's left is 5 bucks, whatever it is. And then after that, a whole new pallet comes, whole new sets of pallets come in and they start all over again. That's a hell of a business to be in, because you never quite know what's going to sell at $20 or $15 or $10 or $5. But you've got to get rid of it all to make room for some new stuff. But the price you're paying for the pallets is set by Amazon. You don't really get to negotiate that. So That's a risky way to run a business, especially when you have rent due for the business, the retail shop, and the taxes that have to get paid. But those businesses do exist in many modern, when I say modern, populated communities around the United States and probably elsewhere, but you'd have to Google to find one near you. And if you're one of those bargain shoppers that doesn't mind spending 45 minutes to try and save $10 on something you could have just ordered and had delivered to your door, have at it. You know, again, I feel like there's a lot of people putting a lot of labor in for very little money for their time, whether it's the buyers, the shoppers that are looking for that discount, and they will just scour because you've got to plow through those pallets and look for the gold, what you think is gold. And then, of course, the shop itself and the labor they go through. But it does, you know, keep it out of the landfill, potentially. I think anything left over after it's $5, I think then just goes to a charity. So it's an interesting business model and one that exists because people return a lot of things. You know, Amazon sells a lot. And if you take a couple percentage points of what they're selling as returns, that's tens of thousands of items probably every day, I would guess. So in any event, that leads us to getting this motherboard. So the board we've got here is an MSI motherboard, Mini ITX. And I was intentionally looking for a Mini ITX board because I still have a couple of brand new Mini ITX cases carried over from Studio B that we never got around to. I need to do something with them. Either I sell the cases or I build in them. So I started looking at what I would need to build, and it turns out I would just need a CPU and a motherboard. I've got everything else. I've got power supplies, I've got RAM, I've got storage. With regards to coolers, I've got coolers, and if the coolers aren't enough, it's not a major expense to buy one. So then it was like, all right, what's a good CPU to buy that I'm not looking for, you know, the best of the best. I'm looking for the best value. And for me right now, at least if you're a home user and you're not a business user, probably the best value for you is the 9600X or the 9700X AMD. If you're a business owner, maybe it's more Intel. However, suggesting that a business would be fine with AMD is the same as me telling you as a home user, you'll be fine with Intel, right? You're going to push back. That's not what I want. Well, the business owners do exactly the same as what you're doing. So since we're not intending to sell this to a business, since this more replicates home users, which are not a significant part of my business, I don't focus too much on appealing to the home users because what I'm trying to do is introduce the home users to the business side of things. That's my whole purpose. But that's not to say I never do it. So if I were a home, just a regular, ordinary home consumer, and I was looking for a computer that wasn't a budget computer, but it also, you know, I didn't have the budget to buy, you know, top-end Ryzen 9s and things, this is what I would buy for myself. And this represents a very standard, common consumer budget-based good system that is not going to be a rocket ship and it's not going to go obsolete anytime soon. So with the MSI board, the chip, a 1 terabyte Gen 4 storage, not Gen 5 because we can't afford that, we're consumers, and 32 gigs of RAM, not 96 gigs, a little RGB. We're not going over the top because we're consumers and we're not swimming in money. At the same time, we don't want to buy something that, you know, is going to be painfully slow or go obsolete when just for a few dollars more you could get something right down the middle. I believe, in my opinion, this is right down the middle for specifically consumers, though businesses could use it. Consumers could also use Intel. All right, so I just want to emphasize, I don't care what your personal preferences are. I can tell you from being in the business what consumers are doing and what businesses are doing. And I'm here to explain that to you. I don't need you to tell me, okay? I just want to nip that right in the bud. All right, so before we get started, and by the way, everything except the RAM, I think, everything is brand new. And I'll have to cut the tape on these boxes and we're gonna find out if that motherboard is like new or if it's damaged. I always make sure when I buy returned product from Amazon, it's coming from Amazon resale. Then I have 30 days to return it free of charge for any reason, even if it's because I changed my mind. So it's a little bit of a gamble, and if the savings is worth it, then absolutely I'm going to take that up. So this was about $50 cheaper because somebody returned it. But I've seen items, they go on sale or they reduce in value. When they're brand new, they're $3 more than the returned item. I'm not buying a returned item to save $3. You're out of your mind. So if there's at least about a 15-20% discount from new on any item, then I will absolutely consider buying it, unless it's something that can be used up, like a battery or a solid state drive or a hard drive, or who knows how much wear and tear has been put on the battery, how much battery life is left, how much SSD life is left. But RAM, motherboard, CPUs, coolers, all that's fine to buy used, in my opinion. Power supplies, all that. All right, let me say hello to everybody joining us today, and let me scroll up all the way up. Here we go. Tony's RC says hello. There's Mark Baggett, Eddie Casanova, Luke Greenia. Thank you for your PayPal today, Luke. Appreciate you. There's, let's see, of course, Mara, our channel administrator, hanging out with us in the chat. I see Mark Gaines. Mark contributes 10 pounds. He says hello, Carey, Mara, and everyone in the chat from a very wet, thunderstormy Northern Ireland. Man, I wish we had that. What I wouldn't give. Yeah. Well, maybe when all the renovations are done and all the debt is paid back, we can afford to take a trip. But I will live vicariously through you, Mark. Thank you for your super chat. There's Buster joining us all the way from Scotland. Buster's now a member for 37 months. Says hello, Carey and Mara and everyone in the chat. All the best from Bonnie, Scotland. The temperature in Scotland is 58 degrees Fahrenheit right now, which is 14.5 degrees Celsius. And Buster contributes 10 pounds. Thank you so much, Buster. Always good to see you. And Richard DeFries also joins us from Ireland, where he is verifying it's very wet there. Welcome in, Richard. We also see Sean Skinner saying hello, along with Matt and Ben Laird. Ben joins us from Scotland. I think I'm in the wrong country for my channel content. It's very strange. I love it. Don't get me wrong. I must associate better with Europeans, or I guess that's not fair, with Britons. Than I do with fellow Americans, just based on the number of people that watch me from the UK. United Kingdomers. I'm trying to cover Wales and England and Scotland and Ireland, Northern Ireland. Marco joins us from Italy, says it's 82 degrees Fahrenheit in Italy right now, which is 28 degrees Celsius. Good to see you, Marco. He says, hello, my friend. I was trying to think, how do they say hello in Italian? It's not ciao arrivederci, that's goodbye. It's got to be something close to Spanish, like hola or something. It's got to be. I'm sure he's going to tell me in a minute. And then once I hear it, I'm going to be like, oh yeah, I knew that. Let's see, what else, or who else do we have joining us? Charlie Purdy says hello. Welcome in, Charlie. Scott Loosemore says hello. And we also see Doman 2000 and Dustin Fuller joining us. Elijah 52 Dickens and David Martinez say hello. I also see the Smash Network and Bajan Guy say hello. There's Scott and Jim Kenny, Dragon Time Lord, and Happy Panda, and Thomas MacT, Terry, LRCX, Mike McCrae. Wow, we got a nice full chat room in here. Charlie Purdy with a $20 super chat says, rest in peace, Brian Wilson, one of the best songwriters. Brian Wilson, the lead singer of the Beach Boys, yes, passed away. But, you know, look, he had a pretty decent long life and a wealthy one at that. But yeah, rest in peace to Brian Wilson for the Beach Boys fans out there. And hello, oh, Marco says ciao. Ciao is hello? I thought ciao was goodbye. Must be one of my days today. Ryan says hello. And Jason H88 joins us. Gil Garcia and Nicholas Barlow say hello. There's Phil Stodd. Marco says ciao is both hello and goodbye. I guess it's like aloha. And Ruzmer Aljanovich says, I know that the last thing we were talking about yesterday was about my recovery data. I want to say that I succeeded in restored programs and data, even they do not them all but pass. Thanks again. Well, I'm glad you got it figured out. And Matt says hello. All right, so welcome in, everybody. Buckle in, because who knows what's going to happen today. Everything's live and unscripted, so what happens, happens. And with my experience in the industry, that's what I get paid to do. That is my job for the last 34 plus years, is to deal with whatever happens, happens, and walk away from it fixed no matter what. Okay? And I'm not going to say that I've been 1,000% on the ball here, but mostly 99.9% of the time we fix it, whatever it takes. So I feel pretty confident, you know, having done this for over 3 decades, that no matter the situation, we find a way out of it. And that's what you do as a professional. As a hobbyist or a home user, you might get frustrated, walk away, return something, give up, wave the white flag. You have that option. If you're working in an industry and you do that too often, you probably won't be working in that industry too much longer. So that's just why I thought, you know, I should create a YouTube channel and share this to inspire people, as well as educate people with regards to, you can fix any problem, you can overcome any obstacle, and if you're interested in doing this as a living because you enjoy doing it as a hobby, you might find it's no longer as appealing to do it as a job, right? No differently than if you went to the park to play sports with your friends on the weekend, and you enjoy that from time to time. But if you guys decide to form an official team, and you have to be at the park, and you have to wear a uniform, and you have to be there, and your team is counting on you, then it becomes a job, it becomes an obligation, and your whole team might forfeit the sporting event if not enough players show up, and they're not going to be happy with you. That doesn't sound like much fun. It sounds like a responsibility and an obligation, and you're paying money to do it instead of getting paid. All right, so hobbies versus jobs. One, you're spending money, one, you're making money. And nothing wrong with either one, but you can absolutely ruin a good hobby by making it your job. Or if you're really, really into that hobby, then it's even so much better when you don't have to buy everything, because you're working with other people's money. Essentially, other people are buying parts and computers, and you get the joy of fixing them and setting them up and solving the problems without any of the investment, and then they pay you to do it. So if you're really hardcore into it as a hobbyist, you would love it as a career. So that's how we separate the men from the boys in this industry, is we determine just through the attitude that we receive from people if this is more a distraction and an entertainment, or if it's really something they're totally into, hardcore. Because if you're totally into it hardcore, it's a great career, right? But you've got to have the right mindset for it, or you're not only will you be upset at your career, it'll ruin your hobby. It'll take all the fun out of your hobby, and you probably won't want to do that anymore. So be prepared if that's an avenue you want to pursue. It's a great career. However, not for everybody. That's probably true of all careers. All right. So today, as I mentioned, we've got the parts, the Fanxiang 1 terabyte. I've got some OLOy RGB DDR5 32 gig RAM we took out of something else. The Ryzen 5 9600X, which is cheaper than the motherboard, quite frankly. In fact, let me show you the list of parts we're working with today, just to give you an idea of what to expect. If I come over here to my screen capture, we should have links for everything in the video notes. So this motherboard is a $240 motherboard. It's not cheap. It's Mini ITX, a lot of ports, Wi-Fi. I'm not a big fan, no pun intended, of the chipset fan there at the bottom. But, you know, look, I'm not going to spend $240 on a motherboard for a $185 CPU. That doesn't make any sense. However, when I scroll down and I look at return, new, used and new, you see here $237 used. versus $239.58 new. I'm not buying the used one. And the new one arrives in one day. Well, actually, this is unusual. I think if I was signed in as Prime, it would probably deliver this the next day for free. Whereas these, the returned items, they may be new from other sellers besides Amazon that are selling, waiting for Amazon to sell out so they can be scalpers. Or it's coming from, this says it's coming from Amazon resale. It says it's used like new, but for $2 savings, and it's not going to arrive for a week. You know what? No. There's the regular new one. So it does say used or new. Pay attention to that. And then all the others, you know, who the seller is and what the seller's rating is. And, you know, this one won't arrive till next month. And I get to pay more from the factory depot that has fewer than 57% positive. Do your research before you order. So I don't have to do the research as long as it's coming from Amazon.com. I can always return it for free within 30 days, right? So that's how I buy with confidence. I'm not flushing money down the toilet. A processor, the 9600X, does have built-on Radeon graphics. That was important to me. And $185 is a great price for a decent CPU. It's really decent. Our NVMe is a Gen 4 drive that uses many, if not the exact same components as the name brands. But why would you buy a non-name brand for the same price? They know that. So they give you the same warranty, the same NAND chips, the same controller. Everything's the same, but you don't recognize the name. Fanxiang. That's an F and a G. F at the beginning and a G. I know the little red lines make it look like it's saying Ranjana. But no, it's Fanxiang, which you can see right here in the name of the store. Anyway, I've had really good luck with these. I can't tell them apart from the name brands except in my wallet. $60 for a 7300 megabit per second transfer speed. That's a bargain all day, and that's one of the things you'll learn if you're a regular viewer of this channel, is as somebody in the industry, I can sort out what I won't provide to my customers and what I will provide. And if it's something I'm willing to provide to my customers, that I'm willing to stake my reputation and my profits on, in other words, if this drive has nothing but problems and I got to return them, I can kiss all my profit goodbye, and I can pretty much lose customer confidence. If it's meeting all that and I'm telling you, you're welcome. All right, you can dismiss that all day, but I've installed probably 3 to 4 dozen of these so far, and their failure rate is 0 so far. Just the same as the big name brands, but for less money. Finally, the RAM we're using, the OLOy DDR5. It's 32 gig. I think we've got the 6000 speed. It's $100. You can see we don't have much money in this. I mean, obviously there's the case and power supply, right? So figure another $200. We're probably at, I don't know, what do we say here? 60 plus 100, that's 160 plus 185. Let's just call it 200. So we'll do the math easy. 260, 360, and then let's say 175 for this because it was returned. That puts us probably around $500 with another 100 on the power supply and the RAM case. Probably about a $700 build. You will need a cooler, so maybe another $50 on a cooler. So with sales tax, it's probably around an $800 build. But again, a good build. Like, this is not bargain basement budget scraping the bottom of the barrel. This is right down the middle of the barrel, and it's got built-in Wi-Fi 6E on the board and Bluetooth and a 2.5 gig LAN. So what I'm telling you is this is not a slouch, and it's half the price of what gamers will spend for a machine that effectively runs all the applications the same. It's differences of milliseconds, and they're buying into numbers and they're buying into hype, and they are paying twice as much. So you get much better value with this build than other people get with other builds using higher, more expensive components that are only slight percentages faster. Yes, they're faster, but not by that much. So if it's that important to you, spend the money, is all I'm trying to tell you. But I think they're fools. They're fools that are wasting their money, and maybe they've got money to waste. I don't. By the way, that $239 price, it's supposed to retail at $300, this motherboard. So just to give you an idea how much MSI wants for this motherboard is crazy. So in any event, you know, MSRP, very rarely do things sell at MSRP, manufacturer's suggested retail price. So I don't know if that's just not the normal price, but Amazon, you know, they like to make it out like they're giving you a good deal. And to me, it was too much money. But this returned one, I think it was like 175 or 170. So as long as it's all there and it works, that is a significant discount. And if it isn't all there or it doesn't work, I simply return it to Amazon for a full refund and it costs me nothing. All right, so peace of mind that I'm not just throwing my money in a poker game and hoping I get a good hand. I don't have the luxury of that. So let's get this unboxed and see if we have all the accessories, see if there's any damage to the socket. Just your basic stuff here. Accessories would be like Wi-Fi antenna. I don't know. I don't need every accessory, but there's some things I have to have, you know, essential. This is a B650. It's not the 800 series. I'm sure if it were, it would have cost even more. Well, clearly this has been opened. We can tell from the way the bag looks all crinkled up, but there's no surprise. We were expecting that. Ooh, oh. Somebody included a package for RAM. I see no Wi-Fi antennas. All we have are a couple of M.2 screws, exactly 2. And oh, this is not good. So there are some accessories we absolutely have to have. That's going to be the Wi-Fi antennas. And you can buy the Wi-Fi antennas if there's enough savings here that go back to Amazon and buy some antennas. However, this little plastic cover was not installed correctly and it has come off. As a result, apparently the CPU socket is damaged. And let me bring it up to the camera and show you. I've had such good luck with buying returned items from Amazon. You know, I'm pretty much assuming everything's going to be okay. But you can see the flaws where, if you look at this bottom part, everything's nice in rows. And if you look up here, you see that weird line? Those are bent pins. That's significant damage to the socket. And if we tilt it, we can, anytime you see these little dark areas, that represents damaged pins that need to be, basically, the whole socket has to be replaced. And that costs usually about $200 to $300 to replace that socket. So why would you do that when you could just buy a new board? So I knew this was a risk when I bought it. I also see on the back there's an M.2 slot back here, right here. And we have, geez, I hope there's another M.2 somewhere. It won't matter because I'm sending this back, obviously. I think there's maybe that fan's for an M.2. The problem with these kind of fans is they're very difficult to find when they eventually burn out, and they will burn out. And then when you have a fan that doesn't work or it's noisy, you just can't get these anywhere. Now, today, Amazon sells a lot more little parts like this than they used to. So it'll be easier to find that when you need it, but I'd rather just have a big passive heatsink rather than an active fan on the heatsink. But whoever packaged this, whoever returned it, did a very bad job. As a result, you know, I'm sad. I don't know what this is. I guess these screws right here take this heatsink off so you can put your main M.2 under there. And, you know, when we look here at this side, you can see all the ports. I think the motherboard is laid out really well. I think it's overpriced for what it is. If I could buy one new for what this cost me returned, I would replace it with an identical and just live with the fan. But I can get boards that are Mini ITX, that are B650s, that don't have the fan, so that's, you know, a future point of failure that I never have to deal with. Whereas this one, it's a future point of failure that, given enough time, it will eventually go out. And these are not standard fans you can just go buy. Even the connector on it is, you're going to have to do a little research to find that. The board is laid out well. I mean, as far as there's USB 3.1, our 3.0 header, lots of SATA ports, power connector, and it is Mini ITX. So this has to go back to Amazon. This is unsellable, and this is one of the first times we've ever seen this. It's not uncommon to be missing some accessories. However, this has nothing to do with the motherboard and should never have been in the box. And this piece is critical anytime you are shipping a motherboard. You must cover that socket, and this is exactly why it's required. With those bent pins, this is not under warranty from MSI anymore. Amazon will now have to eat this. And is this even the right cover? No, it's not. It's almost like, I'll tell you what it appears. This appears to be for an Intel socket. Like they took, somebody, whoever bought this must have been playing around, because people don't just have these laying around. And I was trying to look and see if this says anything on it regarding AMD or Intel. This just says remove socket A. Oh, it does say socket AM5. I do see some broken plastic, and maybe that's why it's not sitting in there correctly. It's supposed to lock in. So I guess that is the right thing, but it's been broken. Wow. That's probably one of the worst we've seen. Now imagine if I didn't have Amazon's return policy. Let me explain to you what the next steps would be. If we bought this from eBay, if we bought this from one of those Amazon sellers that I was showing you that are not Amazon, they could say you need to pay to send it back. They could take 6 to 8 weeks to refund your money. They could tell you there's a restocking fee, even though restocking fees are only supposed to apply if you've changed your mind. If there's something wrong with the product, in this case a damaged product, then it would be illegal to charge a restocking fee. And then you have to have that argument. That's always fun. And you'll end up inviting all of this aggravation and all of this fighting because you were trying to save 20 bucks, right? And in the meantime, if you're broke, like most of us, you can't afford to buy another board. So everything else you purchase sits and depreciates until you get this money back, so you can buy what you should have bought to begin with, which is a brand new product from a reputable seller that has an easy return policy. Now, if you're a system builder like myself, if you're a technician and you have lots of parts laying around and this is just another build, another day, it's part of the process, then I want you to consider that before you place an order on a used item. It may not be worth the trouble for what will amount to be a significantly less amount of savings than all of the frustration you are voluntarily imposing upon yourself in exchange for that savings. If you're willing to take that gamble, don't let me stop you. But don't be surprised. You've got to imagine what's the worst that can happen. What's the worst that can happen is they're going to be difficult. The person you bought it from is not going to be easy to return. They're not getting back to you in a timely manner. You're going to fight. You're going to probably call your credit card company and issue a fraud. You will probably have to follow up with that. You may have to pay for a package to send this back at your cost. And then all of a sudden, instead of saving money, now you spent more for a used item than if you would have just bought one new, and you'd already have your system up and running. And now your parts are just sitting there unusable indefinitely until you can get a replacement board or a refund to buy a replacement board. And if you end up putting it on a credit card so you can get it done, then you'll be paying interest on that charge. And again, you will probably end up spending more because you'll spend upwards of 2 to 3 times more money and certainly more time by buying a risky used product from an unknown seller. And that includes AliExpress and eBay It includes other sellers on Amazon and Walmart and Newegg. Pay attention to who you're buying from. If it's important to you that you have a contingency, that you already know what it is. You don't want to find this out after the purchase. Figure this out before you buy it. And it's a real easy thing to figure out. All right? I'm not studying who the seller is. It's either Amazon or it isn't. That's it. It's a very simple thing to look at. And for that reason, you know, look, I'm disappointed. I was really looking forward to putting this together for you today. However, no customers are waiting on it. This was something I imagined in my head. What if this happens? Well, I already know Amazon will take it back, no problems and no cost. So I still need all the other parts because I still have these cases, so I just won't be able to get to it today. Now, these cases have been around since Studio B, and I didn't have time to get around to it then. So clearly I'm in no hurry. And so, you know, now that it's on my radar, because, you know, it's out of sight, out of mind, I will continue to look for alternative Mini ITX boards that these parts will work on. In fact, it doesn't have to be Gen 4, although it should be. It doesn't have to be DDR5. It could be DDR4. As long as it works with the 9600X and the price is right, I'm fine with it. This was too good of a deal to pass up. You'll see we've got no documentation. If you look at the MSI website, if you say, well, how did you know what's supposed to be in the box? I don't. A lot of what's in the box I don't need. I need the M.2 screws. We got them. I need the CPU socket covered. It wasn't. I need the Wi-Fi antennas. I don't have them. I don't need documentation. I'll go online and get it. I don't need, I mean, I don't know. We'd have to look. There's probably a couple SATA cables. I don't use SATA drives anymore. If I did, they would be external because they're way too slow. You know, you might as well put an old mechanical hard drive in your system from 1984. I mean, at some point, if you're going to do that to yourself, you just ruined your brand new computer. Hey, it saves me money. The drive's sitting around. Yeah, it's costing you time. Well, maybe you say, I got a lot of time. I just don't have a lot of money. Well, now I know why. It all makes sense now. So anyway, yeah, unfortunately, we will not be able to do this build today. And that's why I do this live and on camera. I want to show you this isn't the end of the world and it's no big deal. So long as you know your seller isn't going to be a problem on the returns, and you also understand that you accepted that risk to save the money. And yes, the money saved on this was significant. It was about $50 or more. But this cannot be sold at any price. It is essentially broken beyond the cost of repair. When repair costs more than buying a new one, this just ends up being destroyed and sent to a recycler. This would not even go on an Amazon pallet to be sold off. This will either be returned to the distributor that Amazon bought it from, or Amazon will destroy it and take it as a tax write-off. But it will not show back up as a used product again. And, you know, Amazon should have caught this. But Amazon also warned you, if you buy something used, it may not be complete. So that doesn't mean you can't return it. You can return it regardless of the reason. You have 30 days on Amazon returns, whether it's a legitimate concern or you changed your mind or something's missing that you think shouldn't be. They're going to take it back no matter what. So I can't say that for all sellers. In fact, most sellers find a reason to not take it back. So be careful where you spend your money, even on new items. Sometimes sellers of new items will want to charge a restocking fee. They'll be slow in responding. They'll expect you to pay for the shipping back. So keep that all in mind when you're shopping. It's not just about the item. It's who you're buying it from. Are they reputable? Are they giving you a good price? Do they have good customer service? Chances are, if they have good customer service, you'll never need customer service. The companies that need customer service, the ones you're most likely going to have a problem with time and time again, are the ones that don't have good customer service. These two things go together. You understand what I'm saying? That's a warning message to you. If the customer service isn't good, the entire company's no good. Not just the customer service. That's representative of the entire attitude of the way the company operates. And what that means is the likelihood of that attitude of the rest of the company is going to result in a higher probability of you needing to talk to customer service. So when it comes to peace of mind, when it comes to how you're choosing who to give your money to, you've got to look at more than the price. So when I'm shopping and I see this board's $240, I'm not spending $240 for this board. I will find Gigabyte, Asus, ASRock. I'll find an alternative because the chip is only a $185 chip. What's wrong with this world? Should be the other way around. This should be a $240 chip and, you know, $180 motherboard. That would make a lot more sense. There's a mismatch here. So with that, it's just food for thought. It's what's going through my mind when I'm making a purchase and how I stay in business all these decades. Because if I don't get support from my distributor and who I'm buying from, then how am I supposed to provide that to my customer? At my expense? But I'm barely making 10% of a profit on this. And many times, some equipment I'm selling at a loss. So any support call at all, and I might as well just start handing out money and saying, look, stop buying computers from me. Let me just give you $100 and you go away. Because that might be cheaper if that's how I'm running the business. But eventually, and it's not rocket science, how often can I do that and still pay the rent and pay the bills for the electricity and the cost of running a business, for the phone, for people to contact me, for my email, for people to reach me, for the computer, for the internet connection? Well, I'm handing out $100 bills. I will eventually run out of $100 bills. Then I won't be able to pay my bills, but that would still be less of a financial loss than selling something at a discount that I got no return on, that I have to eat. And if I don't eat it, then the customer says, I'll never buy anything from you again. Just as you would if somebody did that to you. So that's why it's so critical. That's why I make such a big deal out of this. This is my life. This is my, this is all I have. And I'm not willing to just throw it away to some strangers so that they can get a good deal. I've got to make sure that what I'm charging is both fair to the customer, me, and that I have a good relationship with who I'm buying from as kind of a middleman that puts it all together. Customers don't know what to buy. Customers don't know what's compatible or how it goes together. That's my job. I bridge these two things together. I'm constantly acting as a bridge. I bridge consumer attitude to business attitude because, well, the business attitude pretty much knows the consumer attitude. Consumers often don't think about anybody other than themselves. More often than not, they have no consideration for anybody else's perspective other than their own. And it's just not the way the world works. And I'm here to bring that to your attention. I'm assuming all my members have heard this many, many, many times. But for new viewers, for your benefit, the world doesn't revolve around you. And the more money you want to spend, the more you can pay people to accommodate your attitude. But if you don't have the money and you want to be demanding, it's not sustainable. You're not going to get any customer service that way. And if you want to make sure that you don't stay broke forever, be more cautious over how you're spending your money to ensure you have peace of mind that you're not going to get burned. Because if you're in that financial position, you can least afford that scenario. So businesses already know all this. That's how they stay in business. But consumers, they often make bad decisions after bad decisions after bad decisions. Then they want to call me with a weeping story of why I should be giving them something away, which if I did that regularly, I would be in the same position they are, right? But they don't, do they care if they do that to me? No. Anything that benefits them is the common attitude. And, if it costs you money, what do they care? And then if I call them weeping, hey, I'm losing money, they go, well, is that my problem, right? So it's got to be reciprocal. You give what you get, and it's got to be, in my opinion, reasonable. I'm not going to overcharge somebody, some outrageous amount for my time, but at the same time, I'm not working for complete strangers for free. I mean, listen, if somebody wants to come work for me for free, let me know. You're going to just do all the work and I get all the profit and I won't share any of the profit with you? Why would you do that? Anyway, I don't think there's really that big of a difference between the attitude of a business trying to stay in business and the attitude of a customer trying not to lose their house, or to getting buried in credit card debt or anything else that happens from not paying bills because you don't have the money. And there are steps we can take that follow the same steps businesses take to ensure that the things we're putting our money into have a contingency should things go wrong, that there will be support, there will be warranty, there will be customer service. If there isn't, don't buy it at any price, not even $1, because what you will spend in your time will prevent you from moving on in life, and it will just keep you in that financial position forever. That's why businesses don't do that. Okay, let me go back over to the chat, see what's on your mind, and then we'll probably have a short show today because that pretty much sealed the deal. I'm kind of sad, you know. I was really looking forward to the build, and I did feel that, well, this is not my motherboard of choice for that price it was. So there's nothing special about this board that makes me sad. It's just I felt that for what I paid for what this board offered, if it weren't damaged and if it had all the accessories I needed, we had a build. And more times than not, when we order used items from Amazon, they're like brand new. In this case, this is the exception, and we're not immune from it any more than anybody else, but it's also not the norm. This very rarely happens, but it still happens. And, you know, you hope for the best and have a plan to expect the worst. And that way we're covered regardless. Angel said, I've got a very old LGA 775 motherboard made by Gigabyte that still works after almost 20 years. You know what? I don't know what you would do with that, but the technology, if you think of how silicon is made and how solid state electronics work, should outlast you. It should outlive a human being. If it's taken care of, there's nothing surprising about that to me. These solid state drives easily last 70 years. I don't think any of us in this room are going to be around 70 years from now. I mean, I hope we are, but we're probably not. But this, more than likely, it will. And that's the nature of the RAM and the CPU, all of this. When it's configured correctly, you're not overvolting it, causing it to degrade faster. You're not trying to get more out of it and just beat the hell out of it. It will last, on average, all of this stuff is about 70 years. And I would say, you know, there's going to be some exception for product failures for numerous reasons, but the vast majority of it is just useless. It's not because it doesn't work. It's because it no longer provides any valid use. There's no reason to use it. There are people that used to light their homes with candles and lanterns. And those lanterns in particular, kerosene lanterns, very well made. The kerosene, I can't remember what they were using as a fuel. It did cause a lot of people's homes to burn down back in the day. Those lanterns, you can still buy them today that are over 100 years old, 150 years old. They still work fine, but what do you need it for? I mean, apart from a decoration, I don't think you're lighting your house with a lantern anymore, right? So it loses, there's nothing wrong with it, we just don't need it. And that's what happens with older computers. They simply don't keep up. We don't typically replace computers because they went bad. Very, very rarely. They just stop being able to complete the task we need, which is to keep us safe online, to be able to load operating systems that require more resources and applications that require more resources. They're easier to use because the lines of code in the programming has, you know, multiplied 10,000 times larger than it used to be. And that requires more RAM and more processing power to execute, making the computer easier to use, and multitasking and all the power that goes along with that, so we can do the things we need to do today. But these aren't the things we were doing with computers with Socket 775. And with that, the computer becomes an antique, but it's nothing that you can rely on, because what can you use it for except for some very niche, I don't know, running a sewing machine or something from 1982 or 1990, whatever it is, that is so narrow and specific. You could also just buy a more modern sewing machine that connects through USB or even wireless, and also can do multiple different colors of threads and embroidery, and you just program it and walk away. It does all the sewing for you. So that's why I'm saying, you know, the times change, and they don't change because products have gone bad. I have plenty of music CDs and DVDs that work fine. I have no interest in watching non-HD video, nor do I have any interest in playing a DVD anymore because it's not the 90s anymore. I'm not going to reach out to Netflix and see if I can rent some DVDs. We've moved on, not because anything's wrong with the DVDs. They just don't provide us what we expect today. All right, see what else we've got in the chat room. There's Jim KJ3N says hello. And let's see. Bryant Burns says hello. And Jim Keeney says hello. Sharon Wakalich in the chat says, hello, Carey and gang. I am collecting all parts for a new Leon Lee O11 Vision compact case, Intel, using a Thermalright all-in-one cooler. Thanks to watching you over the years, I'm retiring a 7-year-old Windows 10. Hey, that sounds like a great build you're working on, Sharon. We did the O11 compact, didn't we? Or was it just a regular O11? It's a great case. It's a beautiful case. And it sounds like you're getting some good parts there. So, you know, that machine will probably last you at least 10 more years. Peter Laycock, our friend Buster, says an oil lamp is very handy in a power cut. You know, I'm sure you're right, as would be candles. But the problem is, you know, I don't live in a rural area. So I don't know what area you live in Scotland and how often that happens. You know, we don't even have a fireplace. You probably have a fireplace, and I'm sure that would come in handy on a cold night when you lose electricity. Let's say a storm comes in. We have lost electricity here at Studio C. Well, since we got into Studio C in August, never had a power outage. So, you know, in the meantime, if you have something flammable in the house, you've got to be careful where you store it. And if it's not something being used, these days, I have the cell phone light. I have these lithium-ion flashlights that last, you know, 90 minutes on a charge. And, you know, we have a lot of portable battery-operated devices today where the batteries are so much better than those old flashlights from the 70s with the incandescent bulbs that would burn out. So even then, I'm not quite sure I would go back to a lantern. If I was camping, maybe, but even then, they have LED lanterns that are running off rechargeable batteries that will last for hours. So I don't know. If you've got something you're comfortable with and it works for you and you have a use for it, you know, keep it. But for most people, I think they're looking in antique shops to buy that stuff these days, and they're buying it to show as a display item, not to actually functionally use it. But some people out there still might. Thomas Yeager says hello. Jim mentions he's got a 24 kilowatt generator, so he doesn't have to worry about power outages. Yeah, I mean, if I lived in an area where we were frequently having power outages, and I mean, me personally, I don't mind living without power for a few days. I think it's healthy. But, you know, if you're someone that needs power or you demand it, yeah, having a generator, maintaining it, and always making sure it's got fuel and fuel stabilizer. Couple of $1,000s, but it'll get the job done, and you won't have to worry about that anymore. Or even solar panels with a solar battery pack to store the power. May not run for as long as a generator, but it also doesn't require the maintenance. Davis Parsons said he gets power outages a lot in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Yeah, I know Texas has had some issues with power delivery, but like I said, here in Phoenix, it's very rare, at least for Studio A, it's rare. Studio B, it was rare. And Studio C, and they're nowhere near each other other than in the Phoenix metropolitan area, and it's just not something that happens very often. We do get power outages in some little, you know, areas, parts of the grid, if you will, of Phoenix, but for whatever reason, I've just never been a part of the areas where that's been happening. It's happening 60 miles away when it's happening, or at least when it happens big enough that it makes the news, I should say. Otherwise, how would I know about it? All right, what else we got going on? Ben Laird said, GPS is great, but I've never known a map or a compass to fail. Maps can be difficult to read at night, and I've seen inaccuracies in maps, especially, you know, if the map is older. But, I mean, I get your point. But how often does your GPS fail? And by the way, whatever problems you had with the GPS even yesterday, it's better today. All they're doing is making it more accurate and better every single day. So the last time you used the GPS was the worst condition GPS was ever in. When you use it today, not so much. And you know, if there is an error, if you report it, if you report that error to the map provider, which is usually there's a report button right on the GPS, they'll typically correct all the errors that are reported. But if you don't report it and you keep it to yourself, you may be the only one affected by the area and no one else knows. And that's not so easy to do with a map. But, you know, there's pros and cons to both sides. Maps don't run out of batteries or signal either. Buster says, I don't have an oil lamp, but I have LED lamps that are battery operated. Yeah, it's a lot safer. Matt says in Illinois he loses power all the time. Well, Illinois is a pretty big place. I'm not sure the entire state of Illinois gets a power outage. That would be real trouble. But there's probably some areas in Illinois that aren't where the infrastructure is a bit older or more prone to outages due to propensity of types of, say, tornadoes or other forms of storms or car accidents that hit substations, etc. Luke Greenia says, a Generac ran on natural gas for me. I have way too much meat in my freezer to lose. That sounds like something somebody from Vermont would say. We killed a deer, and now we're going to just use all the meat over the next 9 months or whatever till deer season and put it all in a big freezer. Hunters, you know, people who live in rural areas where there are not markets close by tend to, you know, spend, if you're buying the meat, you know, you're spending hundreds of dollars, and then you're like, okay, we're good for a while. And you'll typically have a dedicated freezer for that. At least one. I've seen some people have 2 or 3. But here, living in the city, you just go to any of 30 markets that are all within 5 miles. Walmart, Sprouts, Trader Joe's, Safeway, Albertsons, AJ's, Target, the butcher shops, the Fry's grocery store, Kroger. I mean, it just goes on and on and on and on. I guess that's, you know, the downside of living in a big city is how crowded it always is. The upside is it's never far from restaurants, services. You need a plumber, you know, if you need groceries, if you want a variety of different groceries from different places and varying prices, you've got the pick of the litter wherever you want to go. We could theoretically shop for groceries a different place once a week for 3 months and not go back to the same place and never leave more than 5 miles from the house. So that's a big urban area, right? If we lived somewhere in the country, we'd have the peace and quiet of living in the wilderness, but we'd probably suffer more power outages, and we'd probably want to hoard up on some things that we don't have to want to keep driving into town on a long drive. And then we probably don't have the tolerance to deal with the crowds. I mean, once you're kind of living in a slower pace of life and you get used to that, it is pure torture to then go into the rat race. All you can think about is get me the hell out of here as soon as possible. What a chaotic, nightmarish mess where you're just trying to get through it and just can't wait to get back home to the woods. And so I'm very much looking forward to that day
I've been working towards that goal for some time, and it's not in the cards for me at these prices, but I haven't given up. I keep watching for a deal, keep watching for pricing, and I keep watching for availability. I already know where I want to be, in the general vicinity. Now I'm just waiting until I can afford it. And I will be somewhere in the woods that's rural that probably will have power outages. But I also won't be more than 20 minutes from, you know, a big town. So that way running into town for anything is no big deal. Alberto Gonzalez says hello to everyone. And Luke says, I rarely buy meat or beef from the farm, and venison I harvest. And can't forget about the wild turkey. Yeah, I mean, you know, I was raised in Detroit. We didn't do a lot of hunting. Okay. Jim KG3N mentions where he lives, they've got Target, ShopRite, Sprouts, Aldi. Oh yeah, we've got Aldi too. Trader Joe's, Giant, and Acme. Bryant Burns says, see if you remember that photo. I don't see any photo from you. Sometimes if you want to send a link or an attachment, you'll need to send it to us at our email address. So if you want to reach out to us in email, I'll put that up here. Also, sometimes your conversations are not ideal or appropriate for public. Sometimes you need to talk to me about certain things privately. And if you're identifying something in the past that other people in this conversation or you're going to alienate, you're probably best, just out of courtesy, you know, to share that with us either on our forums or at our email address. All right, and that way we're not ignoring everybody else in the room, so that you and I can have a private conversation. And I am trying to, you know, encourage people to ask questions, but at the same time, not to monopolize, not that you are, but sometimes people just post, like give someone else a chance. And then a lot of times they're looking for a little bit more personal information, you know, what's the price on this, or will you sell that? That is not an appropriate public conversation during a live video. That's something we talk about personally, privately. And if you follow that, you'll probably find that the conversation flows a lot easier. While at the same time having consideration for everybody else you're in a virtual room with, that when you were ignoring them, I mean, how would that make you feel if someone did that to you? So I do ask that certain questions or comments, if they're appropriate for public, great. If they're more appropriate for private, we're very easy to reach. It's no secret on how to reach us, and we're more than happy to give you the time that you need, okay, to the best of our ability. And Photo Mix Media is asking questions about our policies. First and foremost, and I want to be very clear, we're happy to offer the videos to the general public for free. But if we have to explain to the general public, if we have to justify for their approval, then we're going to remove them. So the rules are the rules. If the rules aren't followed, the person's banned. We are not going to disclose personal reasons why somebody is banned. You can go talk to them, but we're not professional if we're talking about other people. All right. So if somebody broke the rules and you want to know what rule they broke, it's none of your business. And if you insist on knowing, you can leave or we'll remove you. It is not your place to come into as an invited guest and then question our choices. You have the option of leaving if you don't like it. We don't want you to leave, but we also are not going to answer to you. You are not of any authority, nor is it any of your business. Okay, we're here as a community. When we act as a community, then everything's great. But when someone no longer wants to be a part of the community, or somebody thinks they deserve answers and they have some authority here and they don't, you're going to find yourself out real quick. So please do not cross that line. What you and somebody else talk about is your business, but me talking to you about somebody else is gossip, and it's just none of your business. It's inappropriate. So, all right, and I want to be very honest with you about it. I enjoy having you here, but you have to follow the same rules as everybody else. Same with the person you're asking about. So if they're not here, it's because they broke the rules. That's all you get. If that's not good enough, that's all you're getting. Now, I will say, when we have supporting members, people that help us to pay for the bills to buy these things to make these videos, we can have private conversations with them that, again, are not appropriate for public. But when we have free viewers, there is no demand a free viewer can make that we can honestly take seriously. You either get what you get for free or you leave. There's no benefit to me meeting any viewers' demands unless those viewers have value to the channel, in the sense that, you know, all of our members make these videos possible. So I go out of my way to do whatever I can for the members. And for the free viewers, you guys are just getting what the members are making possible for you to watch. Without the members, there wouldn't be a video for you to complain about. So we basically give back what we get. You know, when we're being supported, we give that support right back. When we're being criticized, we give the criticism back, to the point where we'll remove you. But if we're being criticized by a supporter, then we'll have that conversation privately. But if we're being criticized by a free viewer, we don't have time of day for that. Because like I said, it's just easier to click a button and just not deal with you anymore. So you pick where you want to be and have some common courtesy as a guest in somebody else's channel, that you don't make the rules, and you are welcome here so long as you have some consideration. That's it. And if you want more than that, support us, and we'll give you more. It's very frustrating for me as a content creator, where I'm offering something for free that someone is voluntarily choosing to watch, and then they think I have to answer to them. It's a very strange world. And so it's just a lot easier to remove that person than to deal with their incessant entitlement. All right? And I'm just telling everybody so you understand. If you think that's mean, I'm just responding. I didn't instigate it. Marsman said he's heading out to the Badlands and Mount Rushmore, Custer Park. Hey, that sounds like a great trip out there in, what is that, South Dakota? Yeah, it'd be probably a nice time of year to go out there too. I've never been. I've got a friend of mine that has a cabin in Deadwood, and I've seen the pictures. You know me, put me in a rural area. It's not as green as I would like, but you know, still, I would definitely go and check it out if I had the ability. The Rock Goose with a 10 euro super chat. Thank you, The Rock Goose. Thank you for supporting us here. Jim KJ3N said, I wish I had a reason to buy a 9600X at $185. That's a good price. Do keep in mind you will have to provide your own cooler. And, you know, I just so happen to have some spare coolers laying around. I wasn't going to keep this on indefinitely, but I also have a couple of cases. And until I decided which case I was going to use, then I could see what my cooler options would be. First thing I wanted to do was prep the board. Before I even worry about what case or power supply, I needed to prep the board first. And since I can't prep the board, given its condition and lack of accessory parts I need, I still don't have to come up with an answer yet. So I'm still undecided on what case or power supply or cooler I will ultimately end up using. But just as a temporary stopgap, it'll be fine. Marsman said Deadwood is on the list also. Yeah, isn't there like some giant drugstore that has billboards all over the freeway? Like, come see our giant drugstore, Long's Drugs, or something. It's just a touristy gimmick, but it's world's biggest drugstore. I think that's on the way to South Dakota, if I'm not mistaken. I've not been there myself, but I remember people talking about it. That's all you could talk about. That's all there is. I think there's also a prairie dog farm that you can stop by if you're a fan of prairie dog. I love prairie dogs. I watch them all day. But there's not a whole lot to do there. Ben Laird with a £5 super chat. Thank you, Ben. Oh, and then of course Sturgis, right? But I'm not a motorcycle rider. Still, about the only thing ever happening. I think. I don't know. I've never been there. Michael MacArthur is now a member for 37 months. Hello, Carey, Mara, and chat. Have a wonderful Friday. Well, thanks, Michael. Thanks for renewing your membership, and thanks for being a part of the community here and your continued support. Very much appreciate it. Thomas says, I've been on tech support for over 2 hours now. Sorry about not returning the greetings. Why would you ask us for tech support? We won't keep you on hold. Or are you offering the support? John Downey said, I've got a tech question. I saved my email in subfolders, and suddenly today I had over 18,000 emails in my inbox. I used Gmail and Outlook. These emails just appeared. This just happened. Yeah, I have no idea. I don't know what to tell you there. When you're using free email like Gmail, there's really no support. You get what you get. And if you pay for the service, then you have somebody to call and talk to who has control of that. If those emails were all dated today, then it sounds like you're getting attacked, like somebody has put your email address on a bunch of lists. I mean, I don't know what to tell you other than you go through them, and if they're spam, mark them as spam. If you don't want to go through them, you can just select all and delete. You can delete on Gmail at least 100 emails at a time. So in 2 clicks of the mouse, you can get rid of 100 emails, and that means 1,000 emails are in 10 clicks. And 18,000, it isn't that much more. And you should not feel an obligation to yourself in any way to feel any necessity to rush through that. Delete a couple hundred. Come back a little bit later, maybe delete a few more, come back a little later, and delete a few more. If you're getting 18,000 every single day, that would be interesting and would probably grab the attention of the administrators at Gmail. They might even shut your email down. So I wouldn't worry too much about a one-time event, but if you are paying for an email service, like you have your own provider that you pay for, then I would contact the provider and I would find out. But when you get a free service, that's just part of what comes with free, is you will deal with sometimes there's a mess and you're on your own. I mean, unless anybody else in the chat has a suggestion. If it's a one-time thing, I wouldn't worry about it. 3D Everything, now a member for 37 months, says, hey, another month went by so soon. What year is this again? Yeah, life does gets busy and time flies, doesn't it? Thomas says he's on tech support, but it's not a tech question. Well, if it's not a tech question, why are you talking to tech support? Now I'm really confused. It's a secret. He won't tell us. That's all right. He doesn't have to. Jim KJ3N says, I just put a Thermalright Peerless Assassin CPU cooler. It's the 120 digital on a AMD 7700X. That's AMD, right? Yeah, Intel doesn't use the X, do they? Actually, they do on the Xeons. Anyway, he says, I have several other 6 heat pipe coolers around. You didn't say if it was good or not. Are you saying you put the Thermalright Peerless Assassin 120 digital on your CPU and it sucks? That it's the same as others? Or that you really like it and you're glad you did it? That's the part of the story I'm the most interested in, and you left it out. Jim says, I couldn't imagine 1,800 emails a day, let alone 18,000. Well, you know, look, if you're a public figure, it's pretty common to get a few hundred emails a day. And for the most part, spam filtering automatically filters probably 95% of it. At least, you know, that's the way it's been for me for years. And the spam filtering and AI filtering are just getting better and better and better. Once they get the AI really dialed in, it can decide for you much better than normal Bayesian filtering or other types of filtering Google might use for Gmail, which is pretty accurate. I found it very rarely makes mistakes. And that filters more than 90%. I don't know exactly, but it's got to be close to about 95% of my email that comes in is spam. And I don't even look at it. Like I have in the past. It just doesn't make mistakes. It hasn't made mistakes in a long time. And I figure if somebody wants to reach me bad enough, they'll figure out another way to reach me if for some reason they're ending up in a spam folder. But I'm not digging through the number of messages I get every day looking for somebody's email that, unless I was expecting them, you know what I mean? Like if a company says, hey, we're going to send you a code, that should be right there around the time they told me they were going to do it. I can use the date and time and look in a smaller area. And then I clean it out routinely. It gets cleaned out 3-4 times a day just to make sure the spam and trash are always emptied. That way I never feel a sense of being overwhelmed. And that's just a system that works really well for me. Same goes with the phone. You know, people that are not in my contacts cannot get through to me. They can leave a voicemail. They don't leave a voicemail, I guess I'll never know you called. I don't know who you are, and we're just not going to talk. You think that bothers me? Not at all. If somebody wants to talk to me and I don't know who they are, they're going to first have to establish they're not a scammer, a spammer, or a bot. And to do that, in the day and age that we live in now, means they might have to try an alternative method if one method's not getting through, or God forbid, leave a voicemail and I'll call you back if you're somebody I want to talk to. You know, customers of mine that pay me, they're already in my contacts list. They always get through. Strangers that are trying to reach out because they want to talk to me, that can be a real problem, even when they're earnest and sincere. I don't have time, and it's really disrespectful to just say, oh, I just wanted to talk to you. Well, that's great, and I don't mind talking to you, but you know you're interrupting me. I've got things going on. And, you know, is there something specific I can help you with? And if so, let me give you a price. Or if you just need a question answered, why not handle that in email? And if the email's going to spam, and again, you're not a customer, I don't know why people think it's so important. It isn't. There's none of those 18,000 emails you've got are likely important. I'm just telling you. Whatever it is, if it's important, they'll send it again or they'll find another way to contact you. So if I was you, I would just delete all 18,000. You know, I kind of give it a cursory glance, see if there's anything in there. Or if there's something you're looking for, use the email search to find those people, and make sure that you separate their emails out and then just do a mass wipe. It'll take a couple minutes. It's really not a big deal. That's the way I see it. David Graham asked if I saw his super chat. I did not, but now that you've told me it's there, let me go back and look. No. Let me look over here. There it is at 1:24, so almost an hour ago. $2 super chat. He says, sorry, I'm late. I was building a desk. Hey, that's cool. Not like we build desks every day, not most of us. Thank you for that, David. Sorry I missed it. Shamim Kajviras joins us, says hello. Welcome in. Mark Leibowitz says hello from Chicago. He said, I had a client and then unfortunately a funeral. Well, that's never good. But we're glad you could pop in and say hello. Jim KJ3N says, all I have to say about my Thermalright cooler is it looks pretty slick. I had a 4 heat pipe cooler on the 7700X. In truth, it doesn't seem to make any difference to go to a 6. It's probably, people get swept up in marketing hype. It's so easy to manipulate the general public, and once one person of the general public buys into it, then others, like, they need to fear of missing out. They just mindlessly follow like a monkey. And you can make a lot of money if you take advantage of that mass thought behavior. You can manipulate people to do things you want them to do and have them think that they're fighting for a good cause. That doesn't affect them. They're doing it for somebody else. And then the more people do it, the more they want to be included. And that even includes selling things, especially anything that appears to have sort of an exclusive value to it, like exclusivity. I have a BMW, or I have a Gucci handbag, or I have Tiffany jewelry, a Rolex watch. Well, Rolex watches are really good, but nonetheless, they're really expensive, and they're often seen as something to aspire to, when if you understood the value of $1, if you had the money to buy a Rolex watch, you would know better. You'd say, you know, I can buy a Timex or a Casio for 99.5% cheaper. It'll keep time. I mean, good enough. It won't be as accurate as a Rolex, but do you really need it to be down to the, you know, that level of accuracy, or can you make the adjustment? Hell, there's Casio watches that sync up to time servers and satellites, and they sync up automatically. Like, get on a plane and you fly to a different time zone, and you watch the hands on the watch move automatically to automatically sync, and you never have to adjust it. I don't think there's a Rolex watch that does that. All I'm saying is, you know, we talk about jewelry. Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful on Shark Tank, if you look closely, he wears a watch on his right hand and a watch on his left hand. And these are very expensive watches. Now, why in the world would anybody wear a watch, same watch, by the way, and when he changes the watch, he buys them in pairs, so he changes it so they both match. Now, you ask Kevin O'Leary, why do you do that? And he says, well, I need to know the time on the East Coast, and I need to know the time on the West Coast because I'm a businessman, and he's full of crap. You can't do basic math. You don't know what the time zone is. You don't know how a cell phone works. You can't buy a watch that has multiple time zones on it. Seriously? No, you're flaunting your wealth. You're spending money mindlessly on jewelry because you can, as an effect to have the appearance of power and authority, and it works. That's why he does it. That's how simple people can be. And it's that easy to manipulate a lot of the general public. And I tell you this so you don't fall victim to it. If you catch yourself doing it, ask yourself, why am I doing this? Am I doing this simply because other people are? And if you're okay with it, I'm okay with it. But if I catch myself doing something mindlessly and I become self-aware of it, I'm like, what the hell am I doing? I'm better than this. I have my own mind. You know what I mean? So anyway, I'm seeing a lot of it lately. I'm seeing a lot of manipulation of the public. And I've been seeing it for a long time with marketing. So when we talk about 4 heat pipes versus 8 heat pipes, all this other stuff, you know, Noxia would have you pay 4 times more for a cooler that doesn't run or last any longer. And they will convince you to gladly give over your money. And you will, and you'll be happy with your purchase. That's how powerful marketing is. In the meantime, Thermalright will sell you an equivalent cooler for 25% of the price. So if Noxia wants $100 for their cooler, you could probably get the Thermalright cooler for $25 and probably not notice any significant decrease in performance, noise, or reliability. It's your money. Mecca Cameron said, I have a mini PC on the way. What did you buy? And Mark Baggett said, I keep my phone on Do Not Disturb from unknown numbers. Only people in my contacts get through. It helps prevent scams. Yeah, for sure. And not only that, just regular interruption. You know, growing up in the 1980s and having a phone only in a building, I think was far superior to the mental health of the public by not always being connected. You were on your own. And if you needed to call somebody out on the street, you found a payphone. If they couldn't contact you, some payphones you could give somebody the number, but a lot of them you couldn't find out what the number was. So there's no way for them to call you back. And you can't really block anybody else who needs to use the payphone because you're waiting on a call. That forced us to get on with life. And it allowed us to focus on what we were doing. We weren't so easily distracted. So for that reason, I often leave my ringer off, even if it's somebody I know. Leave a voicemail, or I'll see you called. I'll call you back when I'm ready to. I'm not a servant to my phone. Bing. Oh, I better stop what I'm doing and check why it binged. That's okay for part of the day if I'm in the mood for it. But I have the power to switch that off and check my damn phone whenever I feel like it. And when you acquire that power back, when you realize whoever's calling you or messaging you, they don't need to talk to you right this second. And if they do, well, it better be somebody with a very important call, or they better be very important in your life. Maybe it's a family member that's sick, or maybe it's your boss who pays you a lot of money and you're expected to be available, or you're not going to get that money anymore. But there's this level that if I'm getting, you know, a ding or a call, I'm important. And yet, it's all an illusion. It's just nonsense most of the time. Somebody might just send me a message that says, good morning. I'll get to it. I'm not going to stop what I'm doing to say good morning back. They can wait. I'm busy. You're interrupting me. But it's not their fault, right? It's up to me to turn that darn ringer off. So out of sight, out of mind, and then I'll think about it when I have a moment. Oh, let me see if I've missed anything. And most of the time, if I miss anything, it's just nonsense. It's nothing critical. So, but that's my attitude, and it's taken a lot of stress off of me. And I wish phones came out of the box that way, honestly. Just stop with the interruptions all day long, just for spam and messages, this, that, and the other. If it's a security alert or something like that, that's different. You know, if I'm getting an alert that the garage door's been opened or there's motion at the cameras and things like that, I always want to know that right when it happens. That's important. And that's just for me to know what's going on. Hey, somebody just showed up at the door. Is that somebody I know? Is that somebody I need to let in? Is that a package I need to sign for? Or is that just a nonsense thing? I'm not even going to be bothered to answer the door. Or maybe I'm not even home. I won't even be bothered to let them know if I'm home or not. They can just go away. I don't owe them anything. So yeah, the amount of power that you can have by simply changing the settings from the default on your phone. Now, when you're a kid, you got nothing else going on in your life and you're bored staring at the walls. That's one thing. But as an adult, you know, leaving your phone on in a movie theater, it's got to be one of the rudest things I've ever seen anybody do. Or you're at a play, you know, they'll collect phones from adults. Adults are just basically these days immature children with no consideration for anybody but their selfish selves. So they'll force you to surrender your phone, and they'll put it in a bag and they lock it up during the show so you cannot interrupt the stage plays in New York. And it doesn't matter if you paid $400 for your tickets. It doesn't matter who you are. You will follow the same rules and you'll get your phone back when you leave. And it's a shame that we have to do that. We have to impose that rule on grown adults. Did you come to see a show or did you come to play with your phone? You can play with your phone outside. If you're in watching the show, you're being very disrespectful to the actors on stage and the people sitting around you. You have to tolerate your nonsense like you're that important. You're not. You're just like the rest of us. And it's a shame we don't voluntarily, as a society in general, have that consideration for other people. And then they do it, you figure, well, they're going to do it, I'll do it too. And before you know it, everybody's got their phones out, and the actors are on stage going, why are we even up here? Let's just leave. Show's over, turn the lights on, everybody leave. We're done. This is a big problem in schools, and a lot of schools are banning the phones, and so it should be. As far as I'm concerned, you're there to learn, you're not there to play with your phone. You got the rest of the day to do that. Let them play with it on lunch hour, get back to learning, get back to school. And if you did that at work, you'd probably lose your job. So, yeah. I'm very opinionated on that subject matter because we're just not that important, generally speaking. If you were that important, you'd be paying somebody else to do that for you. So either way, there's no excuse for it. Let's see. Terry says he couldn't agree more. Mecca Cameron said, Carey gives the purest Gen X rants. You know what? It's just, I don't know any better. It's just how the world is. And it worked. If anything, the only reason our society is the way it is now is because we veered away from it. But veering away from it's a choice. And there is a balance to everything, you know. So I'm not opposed to the technology. But like anything else, there's got to be moderation. If everything is always one thing, you're eating the same meal every day, if you're always doing the same thing all the time, it's not good for you physically or mentally. Same applies with cell phone usage and addictions. It's not healthy. But I'm making the assumption you want to be healthy. Maybe you don't. That's valid. Oh. Frank Jimmy said, always talking to Patrick, he says, I was setting up a client's new computer and I installed Microsoft 365 and only new Outlook was available. If you do a Google search, Microsoft still has a link to install Outlook Classic. What I have found is if you are, if you're paying for your email service, so for example, GoDaddy or something like that, usually the people you pay for your email hosting provide you with Outlook for free. It's part of their contract with Microsoft. So as long as you're their customer, you can they're giving you Outlook so you can access your email, right? And specifically, we're talking about like Exchange, hosted Exchange, or Office 365 as it's been rebranded. And a lot of people don't know that that's available for free. But if you're getting free email, then you have to sort of fix and support yourself. Provide your own email reader and figure it all out on your own. So you're either paying so you don't have to invest the time, you're paying money so you don't have to invest the time, or you're paying in time so you don't have to invest the money. And just set your expectations accordingly. That's just around all different subject matter, and not just with email. That is generally the case with free versus paid, is time versus money. Scott said most young people don't know what a phone booth is. That's okay, they don't need to know. You know, there's a guy in Vermont who's putting old payphones back to use, and he's hooked them up to a cellular provider. I think he's his own cellular provider out there in Vermont. So you can make free phone calls with it. And so I think he's restored and put 3 old-fashioned payphones into like the public library and a couple other places. And he's just doing it as a community service. He's paying and putting the bill and doing all the work, because he's like, this stuff, these payphones are built like tanks, you know. It's a shame to just let them go to waste. And maybe somebody's battery dies, or maybe somebody doesn't have a phone and they need to use one, and he feels it's a good public service since they're built so well. Why let them just sit unused? I love that. I wish the guy would do that outside of his local area, but he's a retired engineer and lives in Vermont, and he's providing them around the areas in Vermont that he's apparently close to. I think that's really cool. I don't see any downside to that. They had party lines. Yeah. A party line would be like the old school landline version of a Discord server. I mean, I'm not quite sure how we got on the subject of phones, but I will remind viewers that missed the show where, let me just step off camera for a second and see if I have, you know, I have half of it. Where's the other half? There's that. Where is the other piece? This is what happens when we're live and I don't have the studio configured. What did I do with it? Hold on, there's one other place I could have set. You can make these phones work again. And it's a little gadget you can buy at Amazon. Trying to find my...
You have email.
Oh, and I've got emails?
You got email.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I'm trying to find my little gadget. So here's a bunch of gadgets. Oh, here it is. Look at me go. My organized piles. Oh, wait a minute. This box feels awful light. Maybe there's nothing in it. Okay. Back over to the camera here. This guy, this is called a cell to jack. And you buy these on Amazon. I think they're like 40 bucks or something. I don't remember. This feels light though. Is it in here? Oh, it is in here. What's in here? This is pretty cool. Check this out. USB port. This is for power. So this doesn't plug into a computer. I mean, you could, but you would plug it into like a cell phone charger. You just need power. And then you plug the phone into just a good old-fashioned landline goes into this. I didn't give myself any slack, so I'm struggling to plug that RJ11 cable in. So once we give this power, this is a Bluetooth adapter, and we can pair this to our phone. And this will work both ways. If somebody were to call me, the old-fashioned ringer goes off, just like it used to. If I answer it, I talk on it just like I used to, and I can keep my phone in my pocket. I've got the 30-foot range of the Bluetooth. If I want to make a phone call, I can leave my phone in my pocket. I can pick this up. Yes, rotary does work over Bluetooth to your phone. This works no differently than a Bluetooth headset that you would attach to your phone. And it's all done with this little box. But you do have to provide some USB power to it. And like I said, a cell phone charger may be all you need. Or if you want to plug it into a computer strictly for the power, and it just works. I mean, it's so easy. And yes, when you pick it up, you get a dial tone. That's all in the technology to replicate the dial tone. It will ring the phone. You can dial out, whether it's touch tone or rotary. The little box translates it and communicates Bluetooth over your phone. And if you want to pick up your cell phone, because you're like, hey, look, I need to go, but let me talk to you while I'm leaving, you can turn the Bluetooth off and disconnect it and continue on your cell phone without disconnecting the call, like any other Bluetooth device. So if you have a perfectly good working phone, this can come in handy if you've got somebody who's perhaps mobility limited, and you could have the phone sit on the desk so when it rings, they don't have to go looking for wherever the cell phone is. As long as it's within the Bluetooth range, the phone will always be, you know what I'm saying? Like these kind of phones, they don't generally get moved around much. And so to know where the phone is at all times and to not have to go looking around for it, especially if you are limited in your mobility, this is a great time saver. Also, the ability to be able to make calls, especially if somebody's elderly, they don't have a cell phone, they don't know how to use one, and they're not interested in learning. You could just get them paired up with a cell phone that just remains plugged in, you know, for the forever charge. And just they can think that they're still on their landline, but when landlines go down in a storm or something, this will still dial out because it's using the cell phone. Tricky. Anyway, it's neat. It's really neat. And if I look over at Amazon and we just type in, I'm just kind of curious if the price has fluctuated here. Cell to jack. And yeah, it's about 40 bucks. Here's my window capture. Right here. This one says it's a high definition audio Bluetooth cell to home telephone adapter. It's a lot more money. There's Easy Jack 2, which looks like a, well, that says data only. There are some alternatives to choose from, but I think the one that's the best value and the only one I've tested is the cell to jack. And you know, it's got almost 3,000 reviews, nearly a 5-star rating. So 37 bucks, free delivery, free returns in 30 days. If you don't like it, send it back. They don't have a big marketing campaign, so many of you probably don't even know this exists. And it's been around for years. And it's really, really easy to use. And yeah, if you had a cordless phone like what they're showing here, obviously the cordless phone would still be plugged into the wall to charge the batteries. But it's still, you know, instead of plugging the phone cord in the wall, you plug it into the cell to jack adapter. And it continues to function no differently than it did back in the old days. So yeah, we can still keep this old technology alive because quite frankly, it's built to last. And it's cheap. You know, you can go on eBay and buy these desk phones all day long for 20, 30 bucks. Heck, you can buy an old school payphone for under $100. That still works, by the way. And Mara says for me to check my email. So let's do that now, and then we'll probably wrap it up for today. Sorry the video didn't go as planned, but that's, sometimes life doesn't go as planned. That's life. And we do try to replicate life, real life here, not edited, polished, scripted, approved videos that are designed and crafted to manipulate exactly what we want to convey. That's so, I don't know, Hollywood. I think the world's filled with too much of that. We need to be brought back down to earth. And well, let me rephrase, I need to be brought back down to earth. And I'm assuming I'm not alone in that desire. So that's my motivation for keeping everything real-time, unscripted, and unedited. You see it exactly the way it happens. Hey, our friend Charlie Purdy sends an Amazon gift card. A very generous one at that. Thank you again. I think Charlie sent a similar item, I would say, last week. So thank you very much. It's very generous. And Bryant Burns sends an email showing a house that I was trying to buy. Unfortunately, that deal fell through. And then the house went back up for sale last year, but whoever bought it screwed it up. Like chopped down a bunch of trees that, you know, once you take away all the trees, what am I going to do? Wait 100 years for the trees to grow back? So they just ruined the house. So the real estate agent said, you know, that house you wanted, it's back on the market. I said, great. And then I looked at the pictures and went, this isn't the same house. And then they went and I asked them to do a walkthrough with the camera. And I'm like, oh, they screwed it all up. Everything that was so good about the house, it's almost like someone intentionally went in and ruined it. And I said, never mind. So the picture that Bryant Burns sent, it's from a few years ago, maybe 5 years, 6 years ago. And if that house, first of all, if I had been able to buy it, it would still probably look the same today. But somebody else bought it, and instead of appreciating what it was, they basically tried to take a nice cabin and modernize it, and therefore ruined the whole cabin aspect. And the whole woods, apparently they don't like the woods, so they started removing all the trees. You could just buy a house in suburbia. Why would you do that to a cabin? Broke my heart. Just broke my heart. But yeah, that was the dream home, I'll tell you. But there'll be another one. I think that catches me up with everybody. I don't see any other emails. So with that, back over to my live stream chat room here. Buster says, I was working at the fuel apron and I had a young lad acting as a lookout to warn me of oncoming trains. And when I looked up, he was on his phone and he was supposed to be looking out for me and my safety. Yeah, that's, yeah. But, you know, look, when it's a kid, I go, okay, well, it's a kid. When it's an adult doing that, that is so disrespectful. But thankfully, at least you were paying attention. Ben Laird said he's got a landline that plugs into the router. Well, there are modems that the cable companies will upsell you to keep your landline. And then those are modem, router, phone line boxes, all in one. And the local cable company here, service provider, offers that. But it's 3 devices in one. It's a modem, a router, and a phone box. Yeah. Ortant says hello. He'll join the chat later. He's visiting with his father. All good. Thanks for stopping in and saying hello. You know, we were just talking about how times change. And some people, they just don't want to change with the times. And if you're financially able to make that decision, all the power to you. But for the rest of us, if our careers are going away and yet we're still working age and we're still paying bills and we don't have much anything else to, you know, we don't have any generational wealth to rely on, what do? You can sit there and yell at it all you want. You can be angry about it, but you're not going to change it. So Procter and Gamble, the 2 gentlemen, were a candle company. They made candles in the 1800s. And I want to say it was Paris. They had the first electric street lamps. And then Thomas Edison basically just stole their ideas. And, you know, Thomas Edison didn't invent the light bulb. He figured out a way to mass produce it and make it so everybody could have one. But the light bulb had been invented like 30 years earlier. I think in the Netherlands. I'm not sure where it was. It's all Googleable. Anyway, Procter & Gamble said, you know, people are buying less and less candles, and as electricity is rolling out in the United States, we're going to have to find another line of work or we're not going to have a business anymore. And so this is the problem you have as an entrepreneur owning a business is, how do you stay in business? Every day, all you're trying to do is keep your business alive. Every day, there's new challenges. And it doesn't matter how much you've perfected your product. Just ask Elon Musk. Every day, it's a new challenge. So you just keep it alive. And they said, okay, we have all this equipment and all this inventory for making candles, and people just aren't buying candles anymore like they used to, and it's likely never going to come back again. Like, people still buy candles today, but not like they used to. So they said, well, we've got, you know, these oils, and we have these machines that we use for mixing to make the candle wax. The scents we use to scent the candles and things like that. What else could we do with the inventory and experience and tooling that we have that we wouldn't be starting all over again? And back then, people didn't bathe. I mean, it just, if you did bathe, you did it very infrequently, and you would go out to the river or the stream, and you'd use mud, and you'd scrub the mud on you and rinse it off, and it seems like it'd be a pretty smelly time to be around. People stunk, and that's just how it was, and that was everybody. And they did have soap back then, but back then soap contained lye, and if it wasn't mixed right, it'll burn right through your skin. So it was a little dangerous to use soap, a little risky. They would clean other things. They'd have cleaners to clean things, but not human skin. It was very caustic, and people didn't have bathrooms. They had outhouses. You know, you didn't have a shower. So almost by mistake, like they wanted to make soap, and they wanted to teach people how to use soap and how to, what do we need soap? We know what soap is. They didn't invent soap, but they wanted to invent a safe soap that was gentle on skin, that you could use way more often, that it would be affordable. And a lot of people they just weren't taught. They didn't have a bathroom. I don't think anybody did, really. It was outhouses. So you could just take it out to the stream or whatever and take the soap with you. But the problem is, if you drop the soap, it goes to the bottom of the river. Good luck finding it. So while they were inventing, they wanted a soap that was white and clean, and came up with the name Ivory, right, to represent this idea that it's pure and it's natural and it's white and it's clean, not dirty. And while they were doing trying to figure out a good chemical solution that was safe, using very similar ingredients to candles, and it's similar manufacturing process to candles, left the machine on by mistake. And when he came in the next day, and the machine had been running far longer than he intended, it ended up making the soap really fluffy. It aerated, put a lot of air in the soap. And he's like, well, what can I do with this? And he made it into soap anyway, and then the soap floated on top of the water. And that flotation also affects the psychosis of the customer, thinking, wow, look how pure and clean that is. It floats right on top. And that was all by mistake, right? It just, who knew it would do that? And then Ivory soap was born. And then that led to the Procter & Gamble we know today. But they had to teach people how to use soap, and that it would be okay. You could use it on a baby and it would be okay. It's not going to harm you. And their marketing campaigns were teaching people how to use soap. But they didn't just wake up one day and decide this. They woke up one day and found people weren't buying candles anymore, and it was getting worse. Every day was getting worse. And every projected quarter was bringing in less revenue, and you could see the end was coming for this business. And they just said, look, we got to do something. We can't keep doing this, and we can't afford to just start up something all from scratch. We've got to figure out how to use what we have to create something, using the tools and skills we have in our backgrounds that people will buy. And, necessity is the mother of invention, and so it was. So when I see a lot of consumers stepping away from computers and going to cell phones or tablets, then I, have that anxiety, like, how can I branch off of this back to something that's busier, keeps me busier, where the work isn't as hard to find. And the solution for me is to just focus on business, because businesses still use computers. If anything, they depend on them and buy more of them today than ever in the history that I've been in this business. But their IT staff is getting smaller. The amount of people it takes to maintain those computers is still fewer. But again, the reason why this doesn't really impact me is because I've always worked for myself, and the small businesses that I work for, they only need one computer person. That's all they've ever needed. And so my only goal now is to be able to find those businesses that aren't happy with the computer person they've got, and they don't have anywhere else to go, and just let them know, I'm available if you decide you've had enough, you want to try somebody else. But they don't know I exist if I don't go and tell them. And I don't know they exist unless I just knock on the door and ask. So any small business, real estate agents, accountants, even dentists, chiropractors. I've had clients that were cash doctor's offices, basically. They didn't take insurance. Just a doctor that got fed up with the system and opened his own little practice where anybody could walk in, like especially tourists. So they would have like an office located in a touristy area. So if a tourist got sick, come in, pay cash. When I say pay cash, I mean, you know, you're going to pay the bill. You're not going to have any insurance. So it doesn't matter if you're paying with a credit card or that's not literally cash, but no insurance. And you don't have to make an appointment 6 weeks in advance. You just walk in, we'll see you, and you pay the bill, and the doctor doesn't fill out all the forms, and you don't have to worry about where to go. And he had a very successful business, and he just needed one computer guy. And I think I met him just, maybe I used his service, and we got to talking. And I was like, oh, I could fix that for you. And then he decided, well, since you fixed that for me, can you fix all the other issues? Sure. And then I ended up, I don't think I ever put him on a retainer, but he would call me as a reactive instead of proactive. And I got a little tired of the emergency calls that were completely avoidable because he was being cheap. So I decided I would be happy to service him as my schedule permitted, but I wasn't going to drop what I was doing. And he didn't like that. And I said, well, there's a retainer. And he didn't like the price on that. I said, well, I don't want to keep being reactive at this low price. I want to be proactive at a steady price. I need a steady income. And you don't have to wonder how much your bill's going to be, you know, at the end of the year, how much it all adds up to. It'll be a fixed price. And he didn't want to do that. And, you know, nothing personal, just business wasn't what he wanted, and the business wasn't what I was accepting. So, you know, there's always these different alternative ways to, when you see a career that you're in is fading out, you can choose to lay there and cry about it, but that's not going to fix anything. Or you can be proactive and even see inspiration from other large companies and just look at, you know, how many times Henry Ford filed for bankruptcy. I think 3 times. He had a tile business. He had all these other businesses that all failed. And you think this guy doesn't know how to run a business, but ends up creating Ford. We end up having an 8-hour workday because Henry Ford wanted his factory to run 24 hours a day and decided 8 hours per shift was ideal for people not making mistakes, so they're not working too long. And he could do 3 shifts in 24 hours, 3 8-hour shifts. And that became the 8-hour workday that we use today. And it's all out of necessity. It's not like he woke up and had this brilliant idea. Well, sort of. He had a problem. And he said, how do I solve this? And instead of just complaining about the problem, he did something about it. And from that is where we see success stories. Not that you're guaranteed success, obviously. Not all ideas are good ones. But the fact is, if you're an entrepreneur, you never give up. Failure is not an option because you can't afford to fail. You can't. It's like saying, I'm tired of swimming in the ocean, so I'm just going to give up swimming. Then you die. You have no choice but to keep swimming until you can get to something to help, you know, some flotation device, something you can hold on to. Otherwise, you cease to exist. And that's when I say, you know, when you hear this expression, failure is not an option, it means if you give up, you die. So you have to find a way to make it work. And quite often you're limited within time, figure it out, because eventually you'll run out of money. And it's fascinating stories. You know, if you go back about the invention of the TV, if you look at razor blades, Gillette versus Schick, it's a fascinating story. They're worth looking into if for no other reason than just inspiration. Neither one of these guys had a clue what they were doing, but they had a problem and they were tired of it. Nobody else on the planet could be bothered. Gillette worked for 10 years before he figured it out. 10 years. You know anybody else that did that? No, they just dealt with it. It's good enough. So I love hearing stories like that because all we're doing is repeating the same thing. Problems are changing and they require solutions. And the bulk amount of public will just deal with it. They won't just say, well, when you shave, you're going to cut yourself. You got to use a straight blade. And, you know, if you cut yourself, you cut yourself. And then there's one person that says, this is not good enough and I got to make it better. And it doesn't come to them overnight. You might toil at that for years and years and years, and then release your thing and then find out nobody's buying it. And then you got to figure out, okay, what do I need to change to get people to buy this? You don't ever throw up the white flag and surrender, because that's death, effectively. And from that is a tiny portion of the population that has that mindset, and those are and often cases represent what we call the 1%. Those are the people, in many cases, that have sacrificed and toiled so the rest of us can have these modern conveniences. But every one of us can do this. It's a choice. And from that, I seek inspiration. So when I feel like I'm facing a challenge that's overwhelming, I know as long as I pursue that solution, I will find it. But the minute you give up, it's over. I hope you find as much inspiration from that as I do, because for me, that's what drives me, is knowing if I succeed, so have other people. The difference is the people who don't succeed never try. And the people who try don't always succeed. Keep that in mind. LRCX said, Carey, my Outlook says it's 96% full and they want to sell me more storage. I want more storage, but I don't want to use the cloud. Any suggestions? Well, the only time you have storage limitations is in the cloud. You don't have storage limitations on your own system, right? Because that's just the size of your hard drive. So you're in the cloud now. Otherwise, you wouldn't be getting that message. Just so we're clear. You are in the cloud now. The benefit about being in the cloud is you can check your email from anywhere. If you decide to host your email the old-fashioned way, like we used to in the 90s, then any system virus or failed hard drive, all your stuff's gone unless you're making a regular backup. That's your risk if you want to do it, and you won't have access to your email any other place. Well, there's ways to do it, but it gets really costly. And the cloud that's the way things are going to go. And it's so much more convenient. Ultimately, it's a lot less maintenance. It's a lot less trouble because you don't necessarily have to worry about all the updates and connectivity issues and stuff like this. First of all, you need to get off the cloud. The minute you get off the cloud, you won't have any space issue. That's number one. Number two, you could look in your sent items folder, or you can even do a search in Outlook to sort your emails by size. You likely don't have 10 million emails that would eat up the amount of space you're using. If you've got a 15 gig standard email database that's free with Gmail, let's just say, you'd need over, well, a couple million text-based emails to fill up 15 gigs. What's eating up your 15 gigs are attachments, either attachments you've received or attachments you've sent. So Outlook has a feature to sort email by size. And if you delete a couple dozen emails that have attachments that you've long since saved to your local drive because you don't want to be on the cloud, right? So we already know you save these. You don't need to hold on to that email anymore. And when you delete those couple dozen emails, you'll probably free up 40% of your storage space, negating any need to host that privately or off the cloud. One email with a large attachment represents upwards of 10,000 regular text-based emails. So simply deleting one frees up a significant amount of space, especially if you sorted it by size, starting with the largest first. You could delete one at a time. What are you holding on to that for? If you've already saved the attachment, then you've already got it backed up, right? If you make backups on your hard drive, now you've got 3 copies of the file. You've got it in email, you've got it on the local drive, and you've got it on your backup at a minimum. And if your email's running out of space, simply delete those large emails that have or those emails that have those large attachments, It's usually just a couple dozen emails, and you'll free up tons and tons of space, and this is no longer an issue, and you don't have to make your life any more complicated. If you never want to delete anything, you're going to spend money. I promise you, whether you're spending it on the cloud or you're spending it for a bigger storage device or a faster computer with faster storage, you're spending. The more you want to keep, the more it's going to cost you, just like in everything else in life. If you won't throw anything away, I hope you have a place to store it all. That's why people pay for storage containers. They pay for storage lockers, storage facilities, hundreds of dollars a month to store things they don't use and haven't seen for years that they could have repurchased brand new when and if they ever wanted it back. Your choice. Sometimes it's good to just throw some things out. That's all I'm saying. It's cheaper, and I think it's mentally good for you to cleanse your space up here. And letting things go and getting rid of large items that take up space that you don't use and can't remember the last time you used it, I think is a very unhealthy thing to just keep holding on to it. And it's expensive. And the more you hold on to, the more expensive it gets and the more stressful it gets. So that would be my advice for you. So you are in the cloud, telling you, or you would not be getting that message unless your hard drive was almost full. And if your hard drive was almost full, you'd be getting all kinds of messages from Windows. Things would be crashing and erroring out. So it's obviously been good for you this whole time. Never mentioned a problem with it before. And I don't necessarily think your solution is the cheapest or most sustainable by going backwards away from the advancement of technology to do things the old-fashioned way. I mean, you could go back to writing letters and get rid of email altogether. So, something to think about. You do you, but that's what I would advise. If you were my customer and you brought this situation to me, this is the conversation that we would have. I'll always be honest with you. Even if it's not what you want to hear, it should be. Because I don't know why somebody would spend the money and time to do all that. Sometimes people just want to cut off their nose to spite their face to prove a point, but nobody cares. You know what I mean? Like, you care, but nobody else. Like, all right, if you want to do it. Seems backwards to me. You could set up your own email server. You could just set up a computer and let it run 24/7 and maintain that and pay for the electricity. And you don't have to use email from GoDaddy or some other provider. You could be your own provider too. We used to do that in the 90s too. Just saying, nothing's stopping you. It just doesn't financially make any sense. And the trouble of maintenance on it is nightmarish. So for me, my attitude, having been in this career as long as I have been, thank goodness I don't have to deal with those support calls anymore. That's all gone away. Good riddance. LRCX said the emails are receipts of years of my book sales. You don't have to keep years of your book sales. The IRS wouldn't require any more than 10 years. No customer would have a reasonable expectation for you to provide a receipt to them for any sort of service or warranty more than a year or two after the sale. So I don't know who you're holding these receipts on, why you're holding these receipts, but you could also print those receipts out on paper and go put them in a filing cabinet. You could also archive your emails to an external PST file and then access that anytime. I see a lot of people that just want to, I've seen people hold on to documents that are 30 years old or older. I see old pay stubs. Man, nobody's going to ask you about your pay stub from 1974. It's not a social security card. It's not a birth certificate. Those things you need to hold on to forever. But it's your stuff. You know, you do what you want with it. And if you want to spend money for something that has zero value to anybody, that's your choice. Like, it has no actual value. Those receipts have no value. Once they reach a certain age, to the IRS, to the government, to you personally, to be able to sell those, like on eBay, or somebody wants to buy them, they have no value. But you'll spend all this time and money just because you can't let it go? Or is there some part of this I don't get? And you can do that, but I'm the wrong guy, because I'm not going to teach you how to spend money and make your life more complicated for something you don't use that has no value. That's That's like an emotional need. It's not, if you came up to me and you said, look, I run this business and I want to keep track of my sales, I'm going to say for how long? And if you say forever, no, we need to have a plan where, and by the way, every corporation does this. Corporations don't hold on to records indefinitely. When a record reaches a certain age, it gets destroyed because the company doesn't want the liability of holding on to that data. So let's say, for example, you went to the hospital. Well, let me use another example. Say you went to the tax specialist and you had your taxes done 10 years ago, okay, or 11 years ago, and you've never been back since. And this tax person refuses to delete any of their old data because, hey, a customer might call me. But then that tax person gets a virus and all their data gets exposed and released out into the internet, meaning now, because that tax person held onto your data for more than a decade, your personal identifiable information has now been released publicly. What liability does that person have now? Because they just irresponsibly have caused you a very expensive and inconvenient consequence that probably never even occurred to you that they would still have that data. They never should have had it. And now, what is your recourse? What liability can you hold them to for the loss of your personal identifiable information? Because once it's gone, once it's out, and the damage is done. So when companies hold on to data for a long period of time, there becomes a liability they endure. And it makes sense, not only for financial, where do we put it all? How do we organize it? But also, what are the legal problems with holding on to that? Now, I don't know that that applies to you, but it's certainly a conversation that I have with my clients, because we're just not going to hold on to documents forever. If they want to do the old-fashioned way, then I'd say print those documents out the old-fashioned way and put them in a file folder the old-fashioned way. And once every 25 years, when you need one receipt out of the 10,000 you saved, there you go. So it's got to make sense, right, to provide a solution to an actual problem that exists in reality. I mean, unless there's some part of holding on to a book sale or any sale for more than a couple of years beyond what's required by law, why would you spend money and effort to hold on to it? I'm failing to understand why that would be worth all the trouble and money. I maintain a list of computers I've sold, but I don't maintain a list of computers I've ever sold. I have receipts going back theoretically to 1991, 1995, I suppose, when I was on my own, but I don't have them anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I don't need to know about the Sound Blaster sound card or multimedia kit that I installed in 1994. Why would I do that? Anyway, I'm not criticizing you. I just really want you to sincerely think about it. Is it worth the amount of time and effort? And how often do you need to go back and pull receipts of a certain age or older? And I just can't imagine a scenario of any business that exists on this planet where that is required. It may be a service you like to offer for some reason, but if you're not getting paid in exchange for that service, it doesn't sound like a good, solid business practice that's sustainable. If somebody wants you to store their stuff for them, I'd be happy to do that for a fee, but I'm not doing it for free, and I'm certainly not going to spend money to do it. Anyway, those are my thoughts. You take it for whatever it's worth. And maybe I don't have the full picture, and that may be more for an in-depth conversation privately, an email or a phone call than publicly. But I don't maintain any business clients that want to hold on to documents indefinitely. I absolutely refuse. I will not do it. The backups are huge. They take forever. It costs way too much money, and then the customers complain that I'm charging too much. Well, don't have so much stuff for me to go through and back up every week. You know what I mean? Like, by the way, you're running out of space. We have to replace the new backup. The backup drives aren't big enough anymore. Didn't we just replace them? We did, but you won't throw anything away. I'm done dealing with people like that. They're just not doing it. I'm happy to do it if they pay me, but they're the people who want, generally, in my experience, they want to do everything cheap. Well, stop trying to hold on to everything. You want everything, and you want to, you know, how much are you willing to pay for it when the everything, the bulk of it, has no value at all to anybody except your own refusal to let it go. Oh man, it drives me crazy. But, you know, maybe there's a scenario you're in I've never experienced before. I don't know. But most of the time clients agree and they go, yeah, you're right. I really should do some housekeeping and clean it up. Because if your closet is full, do you need to buy a new closet or spend money to expand your closet? Or can you go through the closet and see if there's anything in there you don't wear anymore, you haven't worn it in a long, you know, one of these days I'm going to wear that. When's the last time you wore it? How much would it cost you to just buy a new one when that day came versus what is it costing you in storage for the real estate it's taking up in your closet? To the point where you're going to buy another closet or an extension, or just clean the one you've got and find out you've got plenty of space after all for the things you're actually needing and using. I don't know. It's just a different way of looking at things, and I'm not telling you how to do it. I just want you to think about it. Tax person says he should save it in case the IRS wants to audit. Well, how far back can the IRS audit you? You know there's a statute of limitations, right? I mean, your tax person did tell you this, didn't they? They didn't just say, they didn't, I'm assuming they did not tell you that you have to save every receipt forever. The IRS is not allowed to go back forever. You do know this. And your tax person did tell you this. And you do know what the answer is, right? You can Google it. So anyway, and again, I'm happy to discuss it with you privately, but there's some benefit, I think, to, you know, the problem and the solution you're looking for is probably relatable to many other people in the audience, and I want them to think about this. Andy says the lamps you were talking about earlier were called hurricane lamps with paraffin oil. That's what it was. Yes. He said my late dad had one. So there's two sets of rules for the IRS, one for citizens and one for businesses. You should consult your tax person and ask them for clarification, because if your tax person doesn't know the answer, it's time to get a new tax person. Okay. But no, the IRS can only go back so far in a business. And I think it's 10 years, pretty sure. Now, if you've never, ever filed your taxes, that's a different thing entirely. But if you filed, right, and that filing then has an audit because they don't think it's accurate, the IRS has a limited amount of time to call you on that. That's it. So, yeah, fear is very powerful, isn't it? Have you ever been audited in your entire lifetime by the IRS? Not that you have to answer me. Most people say no. So this is all fear-based, based on no actual, you know, I don't want that to happen again. But what if it happens? Well, you should know what the rules are. You're worried about it happening. So it's good to keep you scared because it keeps you obeying the law, generally. It's a good deterrent. But a lot of times fear is derived from a lack of knowledge and a lack of experience. And most audits, when they occur, especially with a small business, they're not a big deal. And if there are penalties and fines, it's usually going to be, I mean, it depends on the business, but like for what you're describing, I have a customer that sells minerals like gems and stones and rocks on eBay. You know, we're not talking about multimillionaires here. So my mother used to say, you can't squeeze blood from a stone. The IRS isn't going to fine you $100,000 on a business that only earns $30,000. You don't have it. So they can say it's $1 million. They could say it's 10 million. You don't have that either, right? So really nothing you can do about it. And receipts can be faked. And if you have receipts that go back so far, what stops you from just making up your own receipts? Because how would the IRS then verify those receipts are real? Go back to your bank or your credit card company and ask to see your statements from 3 years ago. See what they tell you. Just try it, just out of curiosity. Call a credit card company, call your local bank, say, I'd like to get my statement from January of 2022. In most cases, they'll tell you, not possible. We don't keep those records. You go, well, the IRS wants it. Not our problem. Sometimes they tell you, we can get it for a fee. We can get you $10 a page, but maybe only going back to 2021 and no further. It depends on the organization, but they're not keeping the documents. And they're a huge multi-billion-dollar banking industry. So think about that. And he says he's never been audited. Yeah, so you're prepared for nothing that's ever happened and probably likely never will. And you're not talking about a lot of money anyway. You're not going to lose the castle you own. You know what I mean? Like, the idea is you're protecting your assets. But if your assets are just kind of average like the rest of us, it's really not much for anybody to take. They can't take the house you're living in, because then where would you live? But if you have multiple houses, yeah, they could probably take all the extras if need be. Anyway, food for thought, just things to think about. And again, don't take any tax advice from me. Talk to your tax person and ask them those questions. I'm sure if they know what they're talking about, they'll tell you saving that stuff is entirely, beyond a certain point, it's actually going to count against you. It can be used against you. But if you don't have it and nobody can find it, after a certain period of time, it doesn't exist unless you do that to yourself. It reminds me of a joke. We'll end it on this joke. These 3 guys are going to be electrocuted for crimes that they committed. And they put the first guy in the electric chair. And, do you have any last words? And whatever, right? And pull the handle, nothing happens. And they said, well, this must be the will of God, so we're going to let you free. And bring in the second guy. He sits in the chair. You have any last words? Same thing. They pull the thing, nothing happens. We're going to set you free because this is a sign from above that it just wasn't meant to happen. They put the third guy in the chair. You have any last words? He goes, well, for one, you got this all wired wrong. If you put that wire there and that wire there, it'll work just fine. I'm just saying, you laugh at it, but see some similarities. All right, guys, thanks for hanging out with me today. I'm sorry the motherboard build didn't, or the motherboard prep didn't work, but I think there's a valuable lesson in it. Like I said, you want to take those risks. I think that taking risks that you calculate out, risk versus reward, that we have a contingency, that we know what to do if things don't work out. I just simply click the button to return this and I take it over to the UPS store. It doesn't cost me anything but a few minutes of my time to drop it off. And then Amazon credits me the full amount back. And then I can use that money to buy a different motherboard. If they had other used versions of this around the same price, I'd try another one, but there's no particular reason I went with this maker model other than the price, the value, perceived value. And since that value is no longer, well, it isn't made out to be in reality what they said it was, we'll try something else and look for, I'll spend some time tonight looking around Amazon at offerings that are Mini ITX from Asus, Gigabyte, MSI, and ASRock, and find maybe another B650. Maybe I can even get an 800 series. I mean, why not? I don't need it on this chip, but kind of helps future-proof it. If it's basically the same price on a returned item, why wouldn't I? And anyway, no big deal. Like I said, no customers are waiting. There's no pressure. So there will be, essentially what I'm telling you is this build will happen in the future once we get this board replaced and an alternative come in. And I don't know if the alternative will be a used board or a new board. I have to see what's available at what prices. That's all we know at this point. Tomorrow, what are we doing? I'd like to finish the build on the Cougar case tomorrow, but I also want to redo the review on that TerraMaster NAS. Quick poll in the chat room. Which would you rather see? What does the consensus want? Also, LRCX, Larry, look in the chat room for other suggestions there besides my own. You might find them to be more helpful than me. Alan Lindos wants to see the NAS. David Graham wants to see the Cougar. So we're 1 and 1. Ben Laird, NAS. Marsman, NAS. Sean says Cougar. Andy says Cougar. Terry says NAS. And Mark says NAS. But then Mike and Patrick say Cougar. So let's start over again, because that was a tie. Shamim Kajvira's Cougar. Mark Gaines is Cougar. And John Lewis is Cougar. So we're 8-5 right now. Daniel Pert says NAS. Michael Lavelle says NAS. Ooh, it's neck and neck. Well, I'll tell you what. Sub-Zero says NAS. I think I can't go wrong with either decision at this point. Whatever one we don't do tomorrow, we'll probably follow up with on Sunday. That would be my guess. So tomorrow will either be the NAS or the Cougar. That's interesting to see such a almost perfect split. And I do feel bad about that TerraMaster review because, again, I screwed up. So I want to make it right. Alan says, why don't you do both? Well, I'm concerned that we might be here for 6 hours. And then when somebody says, where's that video you did on the Cougar? How are we going to find it in the future? So for segregating things out, for being able to find the reference points in the future, if I say, hey, TerraMaster, I updated your NAS, and they play the video, and it's a build of a, in the Cougar case. And when you're talking about, Carey, you just burned us twice now. So I do want to make dedicated videos so they're easier to find for people that might be searching in the future, and they're not interested in, these two unrelated products. Otherwise, I like the way you think. Just get it all done in one day, but it'll be impossible to find it later. All right. Well, thanks you guys for hanging out. Thanks to our good friends Buster and Charlie Purdy for your generosity and your support. Lou Greenia as well. And thank you for your super chats. I want to shout out one more time both the membership renewals and super chats we got today from 3D Everything, Michael MacArthur, Ben Laird, The Rock Goose, and David Graham as well, again, as Charlie Purdy and Buster with super chats as well. And membership renewal from Buster and our good friend Mark Gaines, of course. Thank you for your continued support. To all the members hanging out with us and all of our regular viewers that are just a part of the community, and that's their contribution by being a member, not being a member, but just being a part of our community. That's very important to me as well. So I appreciate you making this community so special, regardless of financial support. Just being here and hanging out with us and being thoughtful and kind is always appreciated, and certainly would love to see more people joining the community of like-mindedness and kindness. Thanks, of course, to Mara for all the work she does in the background, getting the thumbnails made from scratch, setting up our video descriptions, providing all the links in the video notes. And, of course, to our friends at VIP, what is it, SCD Keys. I'll get it right. SCD Keys sells the Windows and Office keys. And they're legitimate, legal, and fully supported for 6 months, so you don't have to worry about what if it doesn't work. They got your back. And on top of that, I got your back. So if you want to save some money and buy a real product without risk, I've been using SCD keys. And prior to that, it was VIP CDK deals, but it's the same company. And I've been using them for a few years now, and I use them in my business. I stake my reputation on it, and it's saving me a ton of money. So if I didn't tell you about that, I'd be a jerk. All right, so you know what I'm paying and where I'm getting my license keys from, and you can get them from the same place for the same price with the same peace of mind that I have that customers depend on me for. And those links are in the video notes below the video as well with the coupon code if you want to take advantage of saving even more money. And yeah, I think that catches us up. I will see you all again tomorrow at 1 o'clock, the usual start time. I hope you'll join me, where I'm either doing the Cougar build finish up of the Trikes cooler or the NAS. And watch for that notification to go out later tonight, because Mara will set that up. And then that's how we'll both know. Which one is it? I have no idea. Asking the audience did not help. But that's all right. It's all good. That means I can't make a bad decision. And whatever doesn't get done tomorrow, we'll probably follow up on Sunday anyway. So that'll wrap it up. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you all again very, very soon. Until next time, bye for now.